Well, good morning. Welcome back to my 2023 Tour de Vie coverage. This is the day 7 update, and things are getting really interesting. So, our three leaders, you may remember yesterday, Justinas had some bike issues, and Ulrich and Jens were kind of riding, not together, but Jens was making a bit of a break for it. Well, they're all back together. So, this was taken fairly recently in the middle of the basin in a pit toilet, and all three of them are in there sheltering from the rain. So yeah, the divide has got very interesting. So I will go over to the maps and then we can find out what's actually gone on. So I guess we need to start with a weather report. So if we look at the radar, see there's been a massive, basically rain cloud passed over the three leaders through the basin here. And yeah, it looks like they've all probably, I'd imagine, I've not heard firm reports, but I would suggest that there's probably quite a bit of mud. And they've all seemed to have found some shelter, and yeah, they've ended up regrouping. So Justinus, he lost just about 6 hours yesterday, and he was chasing hard last night. Looks like you can see from the race flow that Justinus basically just didn't sleep very much. He had a short sleep, and he was, if we look at the leaderboard, so Atlantic City is kind of the start of the basin for real. So there's Boulder. He was where are we? 6 days, 2 hours. So he's about 4 hours behind there. 3-4 hours. Closed another hour to Atlantic City, and I know Ulrich and Jens both stopped to get some food, and obviously Justinus passed through. And then I'd imagine if they got stuck in mud, then Justinus would have been able to close that gap. And yeah, they're all together and they're all hiding in a toilet. Whether they're all sleeping in there, I'm not sure. I'd imagine it'd be quite cozy, but yeah, this is the Tour Divide. Anything can happen. So let's just rewind a little bit. I've got a message from Justinus. So this would have been yesterday when he was chasing back on after his bike problems. So we'll listen to see what he said. There's just some interesting little sort of tidbits in there which might give us a broader understanding of what's going on with these front three riders.
So I was just sorting out all my possibilities, and then
that was Jens. This is Justinus.
I mean, it was very devastating yesterday, but I managed to reduce the losses to I think minimum, and things are not lost. I caught Mike. Now I have Uba and Jens, and Uba had quite big ankle troubles. He barely could walk, but could ride a bike, surprisingly. And Jens, he has done a lot of planning for this race, like 2 years of planning, man. So he is very sure about his choices for everything.
Now that's really interesting to hear. Two things really to take from that. Well, three. Justinus obviously disappointed that he had his bike issues, because he still would have been right up there without having to chase. But he still is pretty positive, and a positive mindset does get you a long way, especially in the Tour Divide when the divide starts throwing things at you, like weather. Ulrich having Achilles issues. He's not the only one. We'll cover a few others later in the race. I've experienced this before in various races. Quite often when you're riding in kind of wet, damp conditions, your muscles get quite tight, and normally I find with Achilles issues, it's kind of like your muscles getting tight, which then sort of really pulls your Achilles and causes it to swell. So I'd imagine those harsh conditions in the first week have started to affect Ulrich a little bit. Sounds like he can pedal okay. Obviously walking is a little bit more of a problem, but it's a bike race, not a walking race, so he should be okay. I suspect, I do wonder, now that they're in the slightly warmer climates. Obviously it's raining at the moment in the basin, but generally speaking, it tends to get a little bit warmer and a little bit drier as you go further south. I wonder if the slight rise in temperature might help ease these kind of like these issues. Just allows the body to warm up a bit, and hopefully your muscles to loosen, and like things like the pressure on Achilles and stuff to kind of like lessen. a quick fix. Sometimes, actually, Michael told me this: just drop your saddle slightly, and that just takes the pressure off your muscles and drops, just takes the pressure off your Achilles and tendons as well. He said he's done this before in the Tour Divide. This is when I was having issues in 2014 in the Transcontinental race. So yeah, that might be something, Ulrich, if you're listening, maybe try that. So yeah, they're all together at the front there. Jens has done a lot of planning. I think he started last year, and I think he may well have toured the route at some point. So he kind of knows what's going on and what to expect. But he sounds very organised, and I've got another little clip for him. So he's not without issues either. So Justine's had his battery issues. Sounds like Ulrich might be having ankle issues. Jens, he sent me quite a long voice note. So this is just a part of it. Essentially, he was feeling quite strong riding with those guys. Remember, they're all together before Flag Ranch the other day, before the problem started for Justinus. And he said he was pushing the pace a bit, feeling good over Togwati, over Union Pass, and leading over Union Pass. But he managed to, he was saying the clips on his rear pack were full of mud, so they weren't necessarily clipping up properly. And he managed to lose his sleeping pad and his bivvy. So he had no sleeping gear. So let's just listen to see what happened around that. So this is from Jens. So yeah.
I got a message from Ulrich who said, hey, did you lose your sleeping kits? Because I found some. So I was like, yes. I mean, fair game to him. Proper sportsmanship to reach out to me. And but of course, I couldn't. Like it's self-supported, so I didn't feel right to accept it back from him. So I wrote the race director an email with a proposal that I would accept a sleeping kit back from Ulrich, but not to use it until I virtually bought a new one myself. And by virtually, I mean I would go to Steamboat Springs, don't use a sleeping kit before Steamboat, and then when I'm in Steamboat, I would go to the store, find a bivvy, find a sleeping pad, go to the cash register, and then just not buy it. So I lose all the time and everything. But it would just not make sense to buy a whole new sleeping kit when, I mean, that's just a waste of money, right? So anyway, just this morning Matthew got back to me saying Ulrich is an organic part of the Grand Depart, and if it's unplanned, that he's allowed to make a gesture like this, and he's allowed to give the stuff back, which...
So yeah, I won't go any further now because it's quite a long message, and I'm already aware that I do ramble on a bit anyway. So yeah, essentially he lost his sleeping kit. Ulrich found it on the trail, sent him a message, and has delivered it back. So firstly, good on you, Ulrich. I mean, he didn't have to do that. Just shows some real good sportsmanship between everyone. And then Jens, he didn't want to accept it back. He felt like he might have been cheating. And not being self-sufficient, so he's emailed Matthew Lee, who's kind of like oversees the race, and Matthew's confirmed that as Ulrich is part of the event, he was part of the Grand Depart, so it's not really outside assistance. So Jens can accept his kit back, and they can carry on. And the irony is that he's now not using it. They're all in a portaloo in the middle of the basin, spooning each other to keep warm. So there we go. That's the Tour Divide for you. So further back, so we've touched on this kind of lead trio now, and I think these guys, they're getting well clear, and they're going to be vying for the overall honours. We're about halfway through now, just under halfway through. I think actually they're probably bang on halfway at the moment. I believe the halfway point on the Tour Divide is somewhere between Atlantic City here and Wamsutter in the Great Basin. I'll cover that in a second with the with the map coverage, and then behind we have our chasing group. So not everyone is without issue. Obviously, we heard Joe Nation was having a few muscle issues, so he's slowed down a little bit. Chris Burkhardt is in there. So yeah, Chris, he did put a post up yesterday saying he's had a lot of bike problems. I think he had to change a bottom bracket somewhere, but his story's expired. So yeah, having bike issues, that slowed him down a little bit. Incidentally, Chris is an amazing photographer, so give him a follow and have a look at some of his work. Lael's still in there, going nice and steady. She knows this race. She's going to come strong at the end without a doubt. So I would probably put my money on her out of this group here. Stephen Herrick, again, it seems he's riding with or around Lael. Ezra, still don't know much about Ezra, so if anyone's got any intel, be really interesting to hear. So yeah, this is our second pack on the road. Obviously Lael is leading the women's race overall. Further down, Tom Schwemberger, he was pushing quite hard early on. Not quite sure what's happened to him. Maybe just went too hard too early and is slowing up. Bear Stillwagon, Bear's a really great guy actually. He rode in 2019 when I raced, and actually last year he lives in Butte. He came out and just popped up at the side of the road really early in the morning, so I had a nice chat. And he's running with Martin, so yeah, not really covered them much, but they seem to be just trucking along nicely. Bear knows what he's doing. He's not going to slow down. And there's Lael's women's record. So that is currently on Union Pass. So Lael is really making some ground on that record now. So we did talk about how her tracker wasn't working properly in the first half of the race, but I believe that on her record run, she had her tracker replaced around Flag Ranch. So this should be fairly accurate as to her record now. So yeah, she's absolutely flying. So she's basically got Union Pass between her and the record at the moment. Steve Halligan, again, just keep an eye on Steve. He knows what he's doing. He was ill to start with, and I think he'll come strong. He might well close down on this league group. It may well be that being ill did him a favour earlier. He rested more, didn't dig so deep, so he might have more to give at the end. Back down the field. So yeah, just everyone kind of. Dan had a crash, I believe, and had some bike damage that slowed him down a lot. So yeah, there's stories for everyone. I mean, it's really hard to try and keep track of everything that's going on, hence my slight sort of bias towards the front of the race. If you do know any sort of highlighted stories in the mid pack, do let me know. I'll try and bring those to the world. Katja, so she is looking pretty strong in second position at the moment, although she's also not without issue. So I've found this is on her Instagram. Sounds like she's having bike issues.
News. My bag has over time rubbed both of my brake hoses, and I'm slowly losing brake fluid. My back brake doesn't really work. The front one is alright, but it's not good. I'm freaking out only a little bit, but I'm trying to sprint to Pinedale to their bike shop, which is 200 miles away.
So yeah, it sounds like her bag has been rubbing on her brake hoses, and I guess the divide's so long that eventually things like that, they wear through. So she needs to get to Pinedale. Pinedale is on this junction here, so she's got Union Pass to go over, and she's at the bottom of Togwati Pass. So yeah, two big passes. I mean, I guess the good thing about riding uphill is you don't need your brakes. Hopefully they still work downhill. Togwati Pass, quite fast on the road at the bottom. Union Pass is a bit up and down, so maybe not the long fast ascents. Maybe she might just get away with it. But yeah, she's doing grand. And then we've got kind of a couple of women, or two or three women, vying for third position, a little bit further back. So we've got Hannah Simon. And Sasha, who we've mentioned before. So Sasha's from New Zealand. So I've heard from her partner saying that she was actually quite thriving in the bad conditions. And then there's Hannah Simon there. So the two of them, Hannah's kind of gradually crept her way up the field. So it'd be interesting to see how those two fare, sort of going into the basin and over the first two big passes first. So yeah, that is those guys. I should also say thank you to my sponsors, Holyfat, who have helped me with this. Forgot to cue them up. Sorry, I'm getting tired on the divide as well. Holyfat make energy bars, low carb, high in fat, really good for these long endurance style efforts. And they make nut butters and things like that. So you've heard me talk about them before. The links are down below in the description, so maybe check those out if that's something you're interested in. And thank you guys for your support and helping me do this. So yeah, let's have a look at the map now before we talk about the some more stories. So I've been talking about the Great Basin. So the Great Basin in Wyoming essentially is the halfway point of the Tour Divide, and you can see we've got the whole route profile, and it's kind of like the flat spot in the middle. It's still pretty high altitude. We're talking, what are we here, just under 7,000 foot, so that's 2,000 odd meters, around about that. It's not particularly hilly, but the thing you need to start worrying about in the basin is the wind. If you get a headwind, it can be hell on earth. If you get a tailwind, you can fly through it in a day. For perspective, when I rode it in 2019, I stayed in a hotel in Pinedale relatively early, and then I left at 1 a.m. and had a banging tailwind all day. It wasn't too hot, and I got to Wamsutter just before dark, so that would have been probably about 9 p.m. And I actually camped. I crossed this road. I camped down here, so I pretty much crossed the entire basin in a day with a big, strong tailwind. Last year, 2022, the weather hit. There was peanut butter mud. There was a block headwind the whole way, and I think it took them the best part of 2 days to get across the basin. So it can really make or break the race. And as we've seen, it looks like the weather has closed in for them. So this was Ulrich heading into the basin yesterday, and that looks moody and dark. Look at those clouds. So yeah, it's obviously dumped rain and held them all up. So yeah, it can make or break the divide. And as we looked at the tracker, we talked about Mike Cool's record from 2016, which these guys have been ahead. Look who's ahead now. There's Mike. He's still riding hard, and he's still dealing it out to them. So yeah, if these guys are stuck, I believe Mike might have slept on the way out of the basin somewhere briefly, but I know in the second half of the race he really cut back on sleep, and into New Mexico he barely slept at all. So I'd expect Mike there's a fair chance he might continue to pull away. It just depends on the conditions. We saw the radar, looked like there's a big storm coming over. It might dry out quickly if there's wind and heat, but it's still gonna, that gap's gone. If their bikes are covered in mud, it can still affect things. So yeah, our three amigos stuck in the mud in the basin. Let's have a little look. As you can see, it's all off-road. So the riders come into Pinedale, over Union Pass, into Pinedale. So Pinedale is a good resupply for, it's got kind of everything. It's got a bike shop, there's diners, there's hotels. Boulder, not so much, it's a smaller town. And then you're just into this kind of the basin. This bit, it's easier. Dirt roads, quite fast and rolling. I'd imagine they do get quite muddy though, if they, if it does rain. But they're all very drivable. Cross the highway. I seem to remember there's a little service like toilet block down here. Oh yeah, the rest area. I remember filling up my water there in 2019. Probably be a good place for a bivvy as well, to be honest. And then you've got Atlantic City. I can assure you, it's definitely not a city. It's a very small kind of dwelling really. But I think the Tour Divide has really provided a bit of income for the I want to say town, probably village is a closer. It is more what it is. But yeah, there are lodgings there. I think there's a bar. I think there might be a very small shop. Opening hours can vary, but yeah, that's kind of your last chance before the basin. And then you're into the desert. So I've got a couple of videos from 2019 to share with you. So this one, so yeah, this is actually after Wamsutter. I've shown you the videos in the wrong way, but as you can see, there's just nothing for miles. There's a lot of like oil wells and stuff and drills in there. So you don't want to see my face. So yeah, so there is a bit of traffic. The first half is a lot more rugged. So Wamsutter is kind of halfway through the basin. That video would have been shot on one of these roads here. So these roads are a little bit more rideable. They're a bit more hard packed, but this is quite wild in the middle here. That's the proper basin. in my opinion. Certainly the wild basin. And as you can see, this is what you're looking at. There are dirt tracks. They are drivable, but they're not massively used. And yeah, you can see this was 2019, a bit of cloud cover, so that took the edge off the heat a little bit. I imagine it could be very hot if it's totally clear. But yeah, I had a real good tailwind, so I was really whistling through here, and that makes all the difference. Water's something to think about. You may just notice that I had a extra bottle of water on my fork, just mounted on the top here. So this is where, you know, you're in the second half of the divide now. Maybe not Colorado, but certainly New Mexico. You need to start thinking about carrying extra water capacity. So I had 2 1-litre bottles, and then I've got riding this Mason ISO with this structural kind of mud guard at the front, so I could strap another couple of litres on there. I think I actually rode through to Wamsutter without touching that water, but you can't take any risks. So yeah, the riders are in the middle there. I think they're about 40 miles away from Wamsutter. There's a 24-hour gas station there, so they'll be there for a big resupply. And then you're dragging out, and this just drags and drags and drags. There's a few sharp climbs as you're coming out of the basin. That can be muddy, and then you're into Colorado, and Savory is a nice little town, and then Brush Mountain Lodge. But we won't go into that today because that's one. I think we'll go into more details tomorrow when the riders get there. One last thing. So Caleb, who was up there in the second group, his ankles are pretty destroyed. He's stopped on Togwati Pass. So yeah, it's the Tour Divide. I mean, it's catching up with people now. You can go hard for 4 or 5 days, but the Tour Divide is not a 4 or 5 day race. You're not in control on the Tour Divide. I think that was the overwhelming feeling I got. You can plan all you want for the Tour Divide, but the Divide's in control. The Divide decides, you know, if it's going to rain or stuff. So yeah, you have to be flexible, and you have to survive it. You've got to survive the Tour Divide and accept what it throws at you. So the weather's caught up with the race at the moment. Let's see tomorrow what happens. Are they going to catch up with Mike's record into Colorado? Is there snowpack in Colorado? I've heard there's a lot of snow. If you know anything about that, then just drop me a message in the comments. I'd be interested to hear. I'd imagine on some of the higher passes there's still quite a bit of snow. They're still chasing Mike's record. Mike had no snow in 2016. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it pans out. So I'll see you all tomorrow for my next update. Thank you again for the support. Give us a like and a subscribe and all of that. And yeah, catch you tomorrow.